the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum robbery in Boston. On March 18, 1990, two men disguised as police officers walked into the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum in Boston and told the security guard they were responding to a call. The guard let them enter, but once inside, they handcuffed that guard and a second one and locked them in the basement. They got away with 13 extremely valuable pieces of art worth $500 million, including Rembrandt's Storm on the Sea of Galilee, 1633, A Lady and Gentleman in Black, 1633, and a self-portrait from 1634, Vermeer's The Concert, 1648, 1660, Govaert Flink's Landscape with an Obelisk, 1638, 5 Edgar Degas Impressionist works, and Edouard Manet's Chez Tortoni, 1878, 1880. To this day, no one knows who the robbers were or where they hid the goods. The Tucker Cross theft. In 1955, a Bermudian man named Teddy Tucker was scuba diving in the wreckage of the San Pedro, a Spanish ship that sunk near the Florida Keys during a hurricane in 1594, and he found this 22-carat gold and emerald cross. He brought it home and sold it to the government of Bermuda, and it was displayed in a museum on the island that he and his wife owned and ran for several years. However, in 1975, just before an official visit by Queen Elizabeth II, the cross was stolen and replaced with a cheap replica. Authorities don't know who stole the cross, which was considered to be the most valuable object. The Antwerp Diamond Heist. The Antwerp World Diamond Centre, AWDC, in Belgium is the diamond exchange capital of the world, and in February 2003 it was the site of a $100 million diamond heist. A group of Italian thieves known as the School of Turin broke into the underground vault of the Antwerp Diamond Centre, protected by infrared heat detectors, sophisticated locks, and 8 other layers of security. Despite this, the gang successfully looted 123 of the vault's 160 safes without setting off any alarms or leaving behind any signs of forced entry security did not notice until the following day. The Plymouth mail truck robbery. In August 1962, a team of criminals dressed as police officers and armed with guns ambushed a mail truck traveling from Plymouth, Massachusetts, to the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston. Using an elaborate scheme involving fake highway workers and traffic detours, the men got away with $1.5 million in cash, all in bills smaller than $20, and only some of it recorded in what was, at the time, the largest cash heist in history. The postal workers were blindfolded, bound and gagged, and put in the back of the truck. One of the men, authorities believe there were 6 of them, got in the driver's seat and drove for a while before abandoning the truck with the mailman still inside. The remaining defendants were found not guilty, and the money was never recovered. Many people believe the 3 accused gunmen were not convicted because of the sudden disappearance of the 4th, Thomas Richards, bottom right, and who was slated to testify against the rest of the group. Dan Cooper and a stolen plane. On November 24, 1971, a man calling himself Dan Cooper used cash to buy a one-way ticket on Northwest Orient Airlines from Portland, Oregon to Seattle, Washington. About 30 minutes after takeoff, Cooper told a flight attendant he had explosive devices and demanded $200,000, 4 parachutes, and a refueling truck upon landing at SeaTac. Indeed, once the plane landed, Cooper's requests were met, and he released the passengers before taking off with a pilot and a handful of crew members for his desired destination of Mexico City. However, Cooper didn't intend to complete the journey. He strapped on a parachute and from 10,000 feet in the air jumped out of the plane into the night, 30 minutes after taking off from SeaTac. To this day, we do not know who Dan Cooper was, and the FBI has processed thousands of suspects in the case of America's only unsolved skyjacking. Banco Central robbery in Fortaleza, Brazil. A tunnel that thieves dug from their office into the Banco Central in Fortaleza, Brazil. Until a 2007 bank robbery at the Dar es Salaam Investment Bank in Baghdad, Iraq, Guinness Book of World Records awarded this heist the title of Greatest Robbery of a Bank. The plot sounds like something straight out of a movie. In 2005, a group of men rented a property and set up shop posing as a landscape company a few blocks from the Banco Central in Fortaleza, Brazil. They spent 3 months digging a tunnel about 256 feet long and 13 feet below street level from their office to directly below the bank. Over the course of a weekend in August, they used the tunnel to get into the bank and managed to avoid or disable all the bank's sensors, thanks to a tip from a bank employee. From there, they broke through nearly 4 feet of steel-reinforced concrete to enter the vault and stole 5 containers weighing more than 7,000 pounds and holding about 70 million worth of reals, Brazilian currency. Bank employees didn't know anything had happened until they arrived at work Monday morning, and by then, the robbers had already fled the area. 36 people were accused of participating in the heist. 26 ended up in jail for various crimes, and a few of them escaped. But only about $8 million of the total amount was ever recovered, making this the biggest robbery in the history of Brazil. The Great Train Robbery in England. This is the view near Ledburn, Buckinghamshire, over the West Coast Main Line, towards Sears Crossing, where robbers took control of a mail train during the Great Train Robbery in 1963. 1963, a train going from Glasgow to London was ambushed on the Bridego Railway Bridge in Buckinghamshire by a group of 15 robbers who rigged the track signals to stop the train in a remote location. The robbers didn't have guns, but they did beat up the train driver before running away with over $61 million. They fled to a hideout, which police would later find and collect evidence from to prosecute most of the gang. However, the money was never recovered. Dunbar robbery in Los Angeles. In 1997, a group of men robbed the Dunbar armored truck depot in Los Angeles and got away with nearly $19 million in cash. Their evening began at a house party in Long Beach, where they went to establish an alibi, but they sneaked out shortly thereafter, changed into black clothing, and drove to the depot, entering through a side door shortly after midnight. They tied up the few employees who were working and forced them to lie face down on the floor. While authorities recovered about $5 million of the cash in the form of homes, cars, and other valuables, the remaining amount, more than $10 million, was never recovered. Brinksmat robbery in Britain. The Brinksmat robbery was the largest gold heist in British history. In the morning hours of November 26, 1983, 6 men wearing balaclavas entered a warehouse at London's Heathrow Airport belonging to security company Brinksmat. The warehouse vault contained more than $3 million in cash, which the robbers knew because they had help from the inside. What they didn't know was that the vault also contained more than 3 tons, 7,000 bars, of gold bullion. The armed men tied up the guards and poured gasoline on them, threatening to light a match if they didn't offer up the keys and the codes to the vault. The thieves loaded the gold into a van and drove off, but they weren't free for very long. The inside man, Anthony Black, was implicated fairly quickly and squealed on his comrades. Another not-so-smart robber, Mickey McAvoy, reportedly used his cut to pay cash for a house and bought 2 security dogs, which he named Brinks and Matt, to guard the property. He and Black's brother-in-law, Brian Robinson, were sentenced to 25 years in prison. Police never recovered most of the gold. The Harry Winston Heist. The Harry Winston jewelry store on Avenue Montaigne in Paris was robbed by 4 men dressed as women in 2008. The posh Harry Winston jewelry store in Paris was the scene of a 2008 smash-and-grab robbery in which 4 men dressed as women stormed into the store, pushed employees and customers into a corner at gunpoint, stole almost every piece of jewelry on display, and emptied 2 storage cases in the back. They made a fast getaway with more than $100 million in merchandise, making it the largest jewel robbery ever in France and one of the largest in the world. Police found $19 million worth of jewelry from the heist stuffed in a drain in the Parisian suburb of Seine-Saint-Denis, but much of the loot has never been recovered.